Father Stephen, there was one more part of this debate that I would like to get your input on, actually. It was Jeremiah's cross-examination of Leighton Flowers.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, I'll watch it later.
He took an interesting angle. He like tried to take an eschatology angle on it, and honestly, I couldn't really tell what he was getting at there. Like, so maybe you can like shed some light.
Not Leighton Flowers just old school handsome?
Yeah.
Like he is just like 1970s Sears like catalog suit model.
Yeah.
Like checking his watch, you know.
Yeah.
Doing
it's like you can't help but like it. Yeah, but here I'll skip to that portion here because I like maybe you can shed some light on like how is he trying to trap Leighton here, because I couldn't really put my finger on it.
Dr. Flowers, I love the energy. I'm excited. I could tell you are. So I have some questions that you maybe can help me. I've been reading your book and appreciate it. A lot of what you had to say.
Thank you.
So Romans 8, if you want to turn to verse 17, I want to talk a little bit about the context here in Romans 8, because something that was fundamental to my presentation is you got to understand Romans 8 before Romans 9. Paul says in verse 17, we suffer with Christ in order that we may also be glorified with him. So my first question is gloried here, glorified, conditioned on perseverance through suffering?
I think what Paul is referring to by glorified, he's just giving a list of what takes place to the saints of old. And this is in past tense. He's talking about them being predestined, they've been called, they've been glorified. And I don't think he's necessarily giving a doctrine of glorification fully. I think just like he's listing it, if you'll notice, he doesn't use the word faith there either.
Right.
And faith, even Calvinists would agree, is in there, but it's not being mentioned. Why? Because he's assuming it, and he's either assuming it for one of two reasons: because it's irresistibly caused by God, as you might say, or because he's talking about people of faith, those who were loved by God and called according to his purpose, verse 28. He's already talking about people of faith, so it's assumed because he's addressing people of faith.
So yes, glorified is conditioned on perseverance through suffering. That's what you said in your book.
I don't have a problem with that phraseology. I don't have a problem with the idea that God does, obviously, for the regenerate, continue to help them to persevere,
Amen,
even through suffering. And I think we both agree that the indwelling of Christ can help us through suffering.
I think we're in agreement there. So look with me at verse 18. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing for the glory that is to be revealed to us. Do you believe that verses 17 and 18 are talking about the same kind of glory?
I have to study that more in depth. I honestly haven't looked at that in that way before.
Yeah, no, I think you will agree with me that those are connected, because they're talking about the perseverance through suffering in this present evil age, as Paul says elsewhere. Yeah. This comes first, suffering with Christ, so we can later be glorified with Christ in our inheritance. So my next question is, when Abraham lived on the earth, did he persevere through suffering?
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he went through quite a few sufferings throughout his life, of course.
Absolutely. So would you say Abraham is glorified right now?
It depends on how you are defining glorified.
How would you define it?
Well, you're talking like what I think Paul is referencing in verse 30 there. I think he's just giving a general reference. When you're absent from the body, you're present with God.
Okay.
And so in that sense, I would have no problem saying he's glorified.
Okay. In some sense, Abraham is glorified now. I appreciate you saying that. I was ready to quote you if you didn't say that. So verse 18 talks about the glory that awaits Christians, we'll just say. Look with me at verse 23, because he continues to define what kind of glory in verse 18 he's talking about: the redemption of our bodies. Do you think, since Abraham is glorified now in some sense, would that entail the resurrection of his body?
Again, I'm not sure that that's all that Paul had in mind necessarily, but I don't have a problem with generalizing the glorification of being present with the Father as the redemption of our bodies. But again, you get to the temporal versus...
Can I ask a qualifying question? So you're saying it's possible in your mind that Abraham is experiencing in glory the redemption of his body?
Well, again, that gets into eschatology, and so I got to know where you're going with there.
Romans 8 is about soteriology and eschatology. That's why I was really curious to hear your view on this. Do you think Abraham is resurrected from the dead, the redemption of his physical body?
I don't think glorified has to be fully completed. Because you're present with Father doesn't mean you're necessarily that glorification is fully enacted at that moment.
I agree with you.
You're leaving from the temporal world into the eternal. So there's more complex issues.
Do you think he's resurrected from the dead right now?
It depends on how you're using that term. Okay. I know in eschatology about them being the ones who've gone before us being drawn up and called up. That's what I'm talking about. Right.
Is his body resurrected from the dead in glory?
Probably not in the way you're meaning now.
How would you mean it if you're not agreeing with me?
Well, in the sense that absent from the body is present with Christ.
Let me ask you this. Right.
So like from here, it's kind of like Leighton is like very like not like irritated or whatever, but he starts objecting to like relevance at a certain point, and I was like, that's probably what I would start doing too, because I don't
see how it's relevant to anything.
I don't see the immediate connection here. I thought maybe I'm missing something, but is there something that he's getting at, do you think?
Yeah, from that I don't know. Like I don't
What does this have to do with election?
Yeah.
We can go through these super chats and we can keep listening.
Okay. This is a stretch.
Okay.
Unless he says something explicitly later on. Like when he objects to relevance, does he explain why he thinks it's relevant?
He's like, I was prepared for a debate on election, not eschatology.
Yeah, but I mean, how does the other guy respond? Does he say, here's how it's relevant?
I don't remember.
Or does he just move on?
I think he said it's the last part in the golden chain.
That's what I thought he might be doing. That tells me what he's doing. Okay, here's what he's doing. So a big part of the Calvinist thing is the whole golden chain of redemption, right? Which is that there is a temporal sequence in the actions described in Romans 8. That you have like predestination, calling, justification, sanctification, glorification, right? That these happen to people in sequence. Okay. And one of the most common and obvious counter arguments is that there is nothing in the Greek whatsoever that implies a temporal sequence. Okay. There just isn't, right? It's an also, right? So like, it's more like if I said, so everyone who is a member of my parish, right? I have loved them. I have taught them. I have counseled them. I have heard their confessions. I have baptized their children, right? Like a list of things. I did all these things.
It doesn't necessitate that you did it in that order.
In that order, right? That first then I taught them. Then after I taught them, I baptized their children, right? Like,
okay,
right. And so that's how the Greek is, right? And so that's a very common counter argument from just about everybody when they're arguing with Calvinists is there's nothing in the text that implies a temporal order. And then Leighton is actually reading this the correct way. I don't know how he would have gotten this from me. So I wonder who else out there is. But that's good. That's good news to me. The fact that there's somebody out there who I don't even know about who's reading Romans the way I do is a positive in terms of me being correct. Right? Like, in terms of reading it historically.
Right.
That's also how St. Cyril of Alexandria reads it. So I'm on pretty good footing either way. But
pretty good company there.
Yeah. Right. That this, i.e., that this is talking about, that seems to be the flow of what's going on in Romans 8. That what St. Paul is talking about to them is, right, your salvation has begun, right? You've been baptized, you're part of the church, right? This is going on. If you remain faithful to God, God is going to be faithful to bring this to completion, right? And bring you to the kingdom, right? Ultimately. And he's arguing then, look, historically, right? Look at the people of the Old Testament, right? The Old Covenant, right? They went through suffering. They went through trials like you do. They went through all, and God completed, right? God fulfilled all his promises to them. God brought all that to completion. He's going to bring things to completion with you too. And so then Romans 9 is St. Paul answering an objection, right? So the potential objection is, well, yeah, that's true for some people in the Old Testament. But like, there's a bunch of people in the Old Testament who God like brought out of Egypt and then they died in the desert, right? Or who, right, God brought them into the land, but then they ended up losing it. Or, all the tribes of the Northern Kingdom, or Esau, right? Esau was the firstborn, right? And he lost it, right? So the potential objection is, how can we trust God to bring this to fruition if he doesn't always, right? Sometimes. And so then St. Paul in 9 through 11 is explaining that it was their faithlessness, not God's. God remained faithful to them. They were faithless, and that's how they ended up falling out. But so that's his reading. And so what Jeremiah is named Jeremiah, the other guy?
Yeah.
Okay. So what Jeremiah is trying to do is he's trying to argue that glorification, which is the last one in that chain, is referring specifically to the bodily resurrection, which is in the future, right? And that therefore implies a temporal succession. This one is listed last because it's still in the future, right? Now, there's a couple problems with that. Number one, right, and I think this is what Leighton was trying to get at, was, and what I would have done in Leighton's place is I would have said, right, this is why Revelation chapter 20 refers to those currently with God as participants in the first resurrection.
Right, the first and the
So
second.
they are resurrected in a sense, but that has not been brought to completion. That's, I think, what Leighton was trying to say, but he didn't have the reference, right? He didn't have the.
Or he's saying like to be away from the body is to be with God, and he was trying to. I see, yeah.
That's where what he was kind of trying to do, and he didn't do as well rhetorically as he could have.
It clearly caught him off guard. Like he wasn't ready for this kind of argument.
Tangent. But also logically, we can also just point out at a logical level, right? Even if glorification, the last one listed, is still future, that doesn't mean all the others are in temporal.
Right. Yeah.
Like if I ended that list of all the things I do for my parishioners with, and I bury them when they die. Right.
It doesn't mean that the rest of the list is.
That doesn't mean all the rest of the list was in sequence, right? Logically, right?
Yeah. Very interesting. Let's check out how Leighton fares for the rest of it, because I'd just like your debate feedback on this as well.
Do you think Abraham's spirit is glorified but not his body?
I'd have to study that more. I mean, honestly, it's not something I've really thought through a lot. And AK warned me that you would take the most obscure things to really push on.
He knows.
He knows. And this really
also,
I mean, just because.
What's that?
Another distinction that Leighton doesn't have, right, that you could talk about here, St. John of Damascus, right, the two kinds of death.
Yes.
Spiritual death and physical death, right? And so you can say spiritually resurrected, his soul is united with God, right? And now the physical resurrection will be the second piece of that, right? Will be right. So that is in process, right? Yeah.
I don't see how it's really relating specifically to the unconditional election.
Golden chain. This is how it relates, because I'm pressing you on the last link that I think you redefined, and so I'm hitting you earlier in the context. So, do you think that Abraham's spirit only is glorified before God, but not his body that's supposedly in the ground?
I'm going to say I'm going to study that more fully to better understand what you mean by glorification.
Call me up.
What the different aspects of glorification. I've actually had people who agree with my view talk about how the glorification.
I would ask them the same questions.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is I know that there can be questions about a particular view that I'm not studied up on.
I commend you for asking questions. What I want you to be careful of is you don't affirm that Abraham is resurrected from the dead. That's hyperpreterism. And so I'm just saying, I think we're in agreement that he's not resurrected.
Yeah, I thought that comment was funny.
That's not hyperpreterism. No.
Yeah.
No, and I would, if he tried that with me, I would keel haul him. No, because I could point you to all kinds of reform scholars saying things who are not preterists at all, but saying things in homilies like, "You are as resurrected now as you will ever be."
Yeah, it's pretty devastating.
Right. So that's his camp, right?
Yeah.
Could say that. So
that's the same thing he's complaining about.
Yeah, he's trying to construct a gotcha that isn't really a gotcha if Leighton knew.
It's both ways. Yeah.
If idol killer's around, feel free to take this clip and send it to Leighton to help it with his debate prep next time.
Yes. Guys, send this portion to Leighton for sure.